Hi everybody, it's Tim with Engadget, and we're taking a look at the Founders Edition version of the OUYA console. This is the device that's shipping out to the early backers of the console on Kickstarter. We've got one here to give you our impressions. The device itself is about the same size as a Rubik's Cube, and frankly it doesn't weigh that much more. The only physical input is a power button up on top, which does light up when you turn the console on. On the bottom is a round fan, which pulls air up through the bottom and blows it out through vents on the top. You don't have to worry about hearing that, though. It's a very quiet console, especially when compared to the bigger brothers like the Xbox 360 or the PlayStation 3. On the front of the console, the only thing to see is the OUYA logo embossed. On the left, you'll find a listing of the top supporters of the console, with developer Notch being number 1. On the back, you'll find the inputs and outputs of the device, top being power. Below that, you have a full-size Ethernet port and a micro USB. Then below that, you have a full-size USB port and a full-size HDMI output. Taking a look at the controller now, and you can see it's definitely heavily influenced by the design of the Xbox 360. It has two analog sticks, one of which is offset again like the Xbox 360, and positioned up above a D-pad, which is on the left. On the right, you've got 4 face buttons, which are the name of the console, OUYA, with the letter O being the bottom button, and that is indeed the primary button that you'll be using to make selections in menus. You've also got another button that's tucked between the D-pad and the right analog stick, which is used for getting home. Double tap on that and will get you back to the menu from within any game. Look at the top of the controller, and you have 4 shoulder buttons up here. The top 2 are simple digital buttons on-off, and the bottom 2 are analog triggers. Again, much like the Xbox 360 controller, you can use these for precision control in things like racing games for throttle and brake, perhaps, at least when the OUYA actually gets some racing games. There's also a touchpad, which is positioned between the left analog stick and the face buttons. You can't actually see it, but trust us, it is there. You can use it to bring up an on-screen cursor to make precision selections. Only a few games actually use this at this point. We're curious to see how this is used going forward. Interestingly, the faceplates of the controller can be popped off, revealing a pair of AA batteries that provide the power. Now, the idea here is that you can replace these with different colored versions if you want some customization, and they're held on by magnets, but not very securely. In fact, all the consoles that we've seen shipped so far have been received with the faceplates popped off, so that they're just floating around in the box. They also don't fit very securely, and in fact, they are a little bit offset, so that the O button we found can very easily get stuck beneath the faceplate to the point where it won't pop back up again. And the right analog stick also has a tendency to get caught up on the edge of the faceplate where it connects to the controller, leaving you with a very unpleasant feeling as you spin it around in a full circle. It certainly feels quite a bit cheaper than the Xbox 360 or the PlayStation 3 controllers, but you have to remember this is a $99 console including the controller, so some corners had to be cut somewhere. Indeed, it feels like the majority of those corners were cut in this controller, which doesn't feel anywhere near as good as the first-party controllers from Sony, Microsoft, or Nintendo. But thankfully, since it's just a standard Bluetooth connection, you can use a PlayStation 3 controller if you like. The console takes about 15 seconds to boot up for the first time, but after that you can just hit the power button to suspend the thing from anywhere you like. So even if you're in the middle of a level, you can simply turn the console off and then turn it back on again to pick up right where you left off without having to save anything. The menu is very simple. There's a play interface that lets you launch any game that you've already downloaded. The Discover interface takes you into the OUYA store, which is where you find games. The options for finding these games are a little bit limited at this point, but so too is the game selection. Final Fantasy III is certainly the standout title, but of course we're supposed to be getting excited about these indie games, and there are a few here that are worth getting excited about. Wizorb for us was a bit of a highlight. It's an interesting blend of RPG-style gameplay and breakout-style action to give you a gameplay experience that we haven't seen before. We also had fun playing Gunslugs, which is a fun shooter, but beyond that, we had a hard time finding games that were really worth our time. There are certainly some highlights like Cannabalt and The Ball, games that we've seen on other platforms, but truly original titles that are really worth playing are, at this point, still very rare. But of course, the console is still only a week old, so we will hold out any sort of conclusions there. There's also a sandbox option that will let you dig through games that are currently in active development and help in testing them, but there's no way to add friends or to keep track of anybody else playing online. In fact, there's no central means for finding gameplay online at all. A few of these games support couch multiplayer, which is a nice feature, but for the rare few that do support online multiplayer, there's no way to find your friends or to reconnect with them later. At this point, we'd have to call the OUYA console a little bit rough around the edges. The controller itself is disappointing in many ways, and the gameplay selection too is very limited. There are a few games that are great, but there's also a lot of games that really aren't worth your time. Thankfully, you can download any of these games and play them for free, but we're also a little bit disappointed that you don't know how much these games cost until you download them. The store itself shows no prices. It's not until you download them and enter into them and then try to buy them that you actually find out just how much you're getting into. be a little bit better if you knew that before you downloaded, just in case you really aren't willing to spend that much anyway. We're sure the game selection will continue to improve, and we hope that the controller itself improves before the retail launch of the console in June of this year. But right now, if you're hoping for a full-fledged console at a $99 price point, we think you're probably going to be a little bit disappointed. Again, this is the OUYA Founders Edition console on Engadget.